So, hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Welcome Home, Stay Well series. Now, just to remind you, this is a series where we aim to invite individuals, groups, and organizations to start powerful conversations around topics that can support your health and the health of our community. Today, I'm joined by our wonderful guest, Astrid, to explore the question, what's it like to live life gluten-free? So I think, this might be a particularly pertinent topic, seeing as there's so much information available now relating to how not just gluten intolerance, which we'll be talking more about today, but other food sensitivities are affecting our health. So I'm really, really excited to speak to Astrid today. Now, Astrid is the founder of HaloEats, which originally started as a recipe website where she could challenge herself to be more creative in the kitchen, as well as sharing her experience of living with celiac disease for over 15 years. Everything that Astrid produces at HaloEats is naturally gluten-free, dairy-free, and refined sugar-free, and it's also vegan-friendly. Now, I've also heard this several times. Astrid, you've been referred to as, in the media at least, as Channel Island's kind of answer to Deliciously Ella. And I would have to agree, I've had some of your bliss balls and they are very blissful. So welcome to the episode today, Astrid. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm all good. Been a bit of a strange few months with lockdown, but it's nice to be getting hopefully back to normality. I don't want to jinx things, but
absolutely. And I guess you spent a lot of time in the kitchen over the last few months, all that time you've had.
I always spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and I'm really sorry. My
That's
cat's
all right.
Keeping it real.
Podcast as well.
Shush! Oh no, sorry.
That's
he's
right.
going to do that for a while. Sorry, he's a really loud cat.
It really adds the human element, so I'm sure nobody's going to mind. So I know that we planned out a couple of questions to help us kind of dive into our topic today. So I'd really like to get kind of kick-started by asking you a little bit about celiac disease. So what is it in particular, and when did you find out, or when were you diagnosed with celiac disease?
So first of all, just to clarify, I'm not a doctor or a nutritionist or anything, so these are just based on my own experiences. I was diagnosed with celiac just over 15 years ago. To answer your question as to what it is, that's probably the first thing to cover. It's not actually an allergy or an intolerance, it's an autoimmune condition. And when I eat, or when a celiac person eats gluten, which is people often think of it as a carb because of the type of ingredients that it's found in, but it's actually a protein that's found in wheat, including old wheats such as spelt. So some people say, well, can you tolerate those? I can't. Wheat, rye, barley. I'm okay with oats, but some people can't even tolerate oats at all because oats don't contain gluten, but they contain a very similar protein to that, which can confuse the body. And also, if I am buying oats, I have to buy gluten-free ones because the production methods mean that there's a high risk of cross-contamination. If I were to eat any of those things, then my body would essentially attack itself. So the finger-like villi in your small intestine, you might remember learning about them from some GCSE biology, where they increase the surface area to allow you to absorb your nutrients. They all get flattened out if a celiac person eats any of those, any gluten. So some of the symptoms that I had, I was absolutely exhausted because I had really bad iron deficiency, B12 deficiency. I was quite moody, probably not that fun to live with. And various other, all of the problems that you have are associated essentially with having malnutrition and nutrient deficiencies. So iron deficiency being a fairly easy one to fix, but then there's more serious things such as it can cause fertility problems, it can cause osteoporosis, an increased chance of certain types of cancer. And it's those things that really make me stick to the diet, and just knowing how much better I feel. It affects officially about 1 in 100 people, but I think diagnosis level, whilst improving, is still probably a bit lower than people might want. When I first was diagnosed, which was over 15 years ago, it was purely through being tenacious. So I kept going back to the doctor and saying, something's wrong with me, and I had no idea what. And it was kind of terrifying not knowing what was wrong with me. I'd never even heard of celiac disease, and what happened was I went traveling in Peru. I know you've been there as well. Amazing country. Like many other people that traveled there, I got really ill, but I just never got better again. I think sort of my body just couldn't recover, and this transpired. Whether I was medically predisposed to it, because it can be hereditary, I don't know, and I'll probably never know. But so that's sort of my diagnosis story. As I said, I just kept going back, being tenacious, saying, you know, something is wrong with me, I'm not sure what. When I was diagnosed, it was quite overwhelming, because to be told you've got to completely overhaul your diet, especially when I'd never been a fussy eater, was quite a big thing to take on. But actually, it was also kind of a relief, because okay, I wasn't going to die. I just needed to learn how to adapt to that new scenario.
No, thank you so much for sharing your story. That's really powerful. You know, and I'm sure that there's people out there listening to this who can, you know, resonate in some way with being faced with a health challenge that perhaps it's quite difficult to get answers to in the beginning. As we know, you know, there are so many autoimmune diseases and other things. That's fantastic, and thanks for sharing, Astrid. I'm just, you know, reflecting on my practice, because, you know, in my day-to-day running, I'm a nutritionist, and what we see a lot these days is something also called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So this is where we're seeing a lot of people react negatively in their body, particularly, and, you know, the digestive health and things like that. Through eating or, you know, having reactions to gluten. But, you know, as well as that, obviously we're here to talk more about celiac today and your experiences. But we know that people are dairy intolerant, people are almost sugar intolerant, and people have a lot of problems with a lot of foods. So I'm really excited to kind of explore with you today, and maybe what some of the challenges have been for yourself, and, you know, hopefully we can draw some great, you know, tips and tools out that anybody watching this that, you know, is going through some similar kind of dietary stuff will be able to contribute. And it sounds like the cat really wants to get involved, and I absolutely.
I know. I'm so sorry.
No, that's amazing.
He's like, I don't have any dietary requirements. I just eat fish all day long. I'm really sorry.
No, that's fine. So I just kind of want to ask you, sorry to dive straight in and kind of ask you a little bit about HaloEats. You know, so how did HaloEats start, and kind of what's the values and the ethos? You know, imagine that somebody watching this has absolutely no idea what HaloEats is to begin with. Yeah,
that may well be the case. I'm sure not everybody's heard of it. It's fairly new. So I have to eat gluten-free diet, as you know. I'm celiac. And as I said, I was diagnosed 15 years ago, so things have changed a lot. But I increasingly found myself, because of being forced to change my diet, just sort of reading more and more. I'm not a nutritionist, but because I've always liked food, I've always been a bit of a foodie, I just wanted to educate myself more, and also challenge, not just in terms of what nutrients I was putting into my body, but also challenging myself in the kitchen a bit more. So the website just started off with me sharing recipes that I created, and all of them being gluten-free, obviously, but then also dairy-free and refined sugar-free and vegan-friendly, purely because I just, through my research, I tried to sort of adapt the way I was eating, and I felt better for doing so. And then off the back of that, people really responded well to it. And as you say, I have a couple of celiacs that follow me, but I think the vast majority of people are just interested in eating a healthier lifestyle, or they may have, I don't know, dairy intolerance, for example, which really makes sense to me, because how weird is it that we as a species consume milk from a cow anyway? I find it really odd. So I'm not surprised that there are many people with dairy intolerances. But so people responded really, really well to the website, and then they kept asking me, so we love your products, but we love the recipes, but we really want to buy products, where can we get them? So that was why I launched granola and bliss balls, which, thank you for your compliment on them earlier.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I must admit, if nobody's tried your granola or your bliss balls, I would recommend heading down to, I don't know if they're stocked up in Hansa at the minute, or where the people can get them, maybe not at the moment, but I've enjoyed many of those throughout my short career doing this. And thanks for
direct order to me. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. We'll absolutely let people know where they can get in touch with you at the end. So Now, if I was to kind of visit HaloEats, what sort of recipes, what sort of information, what sort of inspiration can I expect to find on the website?
I'm looking at making the website a little bit more interactive at the moment, but as you can relate to, setting up a website and rejigging a website is not an overnight task, but just to try and be able to provide and add a bit more value to the website, and having some more editorial, sounds very sort of magazine-y, but having some more features on there with interviews with health professionals, for example. But at the moment it's just recipes, and they're all split into category, but you can use the search functionality to say, right, I know that I've just bought some beetroot, what can I do with it? And you can search by ingredient, or you could also search by the type of concern that you might have. So say, for example, you're thinking, oh, my skin's looking a bit dull at the moment, what can I do to promote healthy skin? You can search, just type in skin, and it will come up with those recipes. But predominantly they're just filtered by breakfast, lunch and dinner, side dishes and snacks. Sorry, not side dishes and snacks, side dishes and salads, drinks, and snacks and treats. I have snacks and treats on the brain. I've just been munching on something I've been recipe testing.
Yeah, I'm sure that anybody who's checked out Welcome Home as our social media channels has seen that, we've got this great partnership with the website, and we've been sharing a lot of your recipes, and some of the feedback that we've had, particularly about the snacks, funnily enough, the snacks and the treats has been fantastic, and I've seen some really awesome stuff on there.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing a little bit of an introduction to that. What I'd really like to kind of explore with you next is a little bit around the challenges that have kind of come up for you after being diagnosed, and understanding that personally some changes needed to be made to your diet, and I'm interested to know how did that affect you socially, emotionally, physically, was it a great benefit to change your diet, but did it have other drawbacks or challenges?
It's not been, although I was diagnosed and had to overhaul my diet overnight, it's not been an overnight process in terms of the journey. I know that's really annoying when people say that, but it started off, so when I was first diagnosed, I was at university living the typical sort of student diet, because one of this TMI, but one of the initial symptoms is that you just constantly have an upset stomach. And so I'd always been told, oh, if you're not feeling great, just have some dry toast. So pre-diagnosis, I was living on dry toast, which was probably the worst thing I could be doing to myself because it's full of gluten. And living this typical student lifestyle with, pasta, maybe some pesto from a jar that's probably heavily processed, but those sorts of ingredients. So actually, when I was first diagnosed, I started to feel better pretty quickly after changing my diet to gluten-free. I was still eating, non-vegan, I was still eating dairy and all of those things at that point. But I started to feel a lot better. So actually, socially, I was probably a much nicer person to be around. I wasn't constantly moody and feeling, nobody's going to be the nicest person in the world if they're feeling awful. So that probably made a big impact, although socially it probably was a bit of a challenge, because back then we didn't have the labeling we have now, and it was just such an overwhelming experience to have to educate myself, and things that you wouldn't think of, like when people say, oh, I'm avoiding gluten, you automatically might consider a bread, pizza, pasta, biscuits, cake, those sorts of things. A lot of those are sociable, cake, biscuits, if you're having them in the office, for example, or pizza would be something you might share. But actually, some of the other things that I didn't think about and wouldn't have even considered prior to diagnosis, as I said, I hadn't even heard of celiac disease, but soy sauce. So Oriental food is out. I can now have it because I can have it with tamari, and some of the restaurants over here are really good at catering for that. But back when I was diagnosed, I just couldn't join in if people were getting a Chinese takeaway, for example. And then awareness has improved so much. I used to have to go and buy gluten-free bread. Well, I didn't buy it. I got it on prescription at the pharmacy. Nowadays, you've got pretty much half an aisle given over to free from foods. I tend to just use them as a backup and have them in the cupboard in case of emergencies, but generally I try to avoid them because they're quite heavily processed, or some of them can be. But as you say, just socially going out to eat, that's a lot easier. the thing I probably find the hardest now is going to somebody's house, like if other people are catering for you, because you don't want to, you know, especially it's very English, you don't want to cause a fuss. But you know, it's not being a fussy eater, it's that I have to do this. But it's even things that any normal person would take for granted. But you know, I have a separate toaster in the kitchen to my partner. If I'm eating a barbecue, then it's a bit of a, you know, oh, I need to be careful of cross-contamination. But if you're going to somebody's birthday barbecue, then you don't want to have to be that fussy person. You're like, oh, excuse me, can you put my gluten-free vegan burger on before you start cooking everyone else's food? So it's kind of just about communicating with people, explaining that you're not being fussy, and don't just spring it on them either. You know, have a bit of a polite word before you go around to the house. So.
No, that's amazing, and you know, there's so much to unpick there. You know, the first thing that really interested me that you said was that, you know, it is a journey that is not an overnight one, and we are very lucky now that there's a much greater level of awareness of the foods that do contain gluten, and that the packaging is getting better. And I even noticed, you know, for a very long time I avoided certain sausages or certain burgers and things like that in the supermarket. And that's because there are so many foods which are just, you know, stock full of gluten that you would never even consider.
Yeah,
you know,
well, it's a cheap ingredient. It's a filler. So
there we go. Well, I've learned something new today, and that's amazing. And I can completely understand that. You know, socially, any food or dietary restriction, or you know, any time that, you know, a more common one for maybe viewers is when you're socializing with friends and you don't want to drink alcohol, or you know, these questions. They come up and they can be challenging, right? And I really love, you know, how you said a little bit of forethought, you know, for the individual involved, and you know, maybe that's to not offend or to, you know, allow space for them to understand more clearly, kind of what's going on for you. And I really enjoyed that, you know, how you put that across. You know, I just kind of want to say, or ask, you know, if there's someone out there that is perhaps watching this and they are thinking that, well, you know, I have some perhaps digestive issues, or I have some health issues that I'm aware are potentially linked to the foods that I kind of eat, you know, where would you get started in terms of making dietary changes? You know, would you be looking to overhaul things completely, or how would you kind of go about
that? Personally, I think if you're concerned that you're celiac, or that you have a serious intolerance, I do think it's beneficial to get the official diagnosis. So I still have blood tests every year, because even though I'm so careful about what I eat, but every so often, you know, I still have to have vitamin B12 booster injections every 3 months, and every so often my folate levels will drop, and I get really annoyed because I'm like, damn it, I eat vegetables, I eat a healthy diet. But yeah, so I think keeping an eye on things like that's really important. And also bone density scans, that's another thing that I have to have. So if you are concerned, I would push to get the proper medical diagnosis, and don't take, you know your own body. You might not be a doctor, but you know, don't be dismissed. I think keeping a food diary is really beneficial, because as I say, you know your own body, so it's nice to take that ownership, and it will probably make you feel a little bit more in control as well, and feel like you're actively doing something. I didn't overhaul my diet apart from having to for gluten. I didn't go dairy free. I didn't go plant-based overnight. That's been very much a gradual process as I've become more educated about what I've been putting in my body, and it's my personal choice. You know, that's not for everybody, but I think if you are going to do something like that, then for some people it works to be very black and white and make the switch overnight. You'll know yourself. But other people, it's quite nice to just make gradual changes. Don't beat yourself up if you go, you know, if you have a slip up one time, or you can maybe try and introduce eating that way at home. But if you go out, let yourself, you know, relax, and actually have fun with it. There's so many amazing alternative products out there now. You know, have fun tasting the different alternative milks to dairy milk, or you know, discovering different chocolates to those mass-produced ones. There's so many alternatives. So that's kind of the advice that I would give.
No, I love that. And, you know, it's so inclusive of where everybody is at as an individual. And I think that's something that's so important, you know, and one thing which I really enjoyed listening to you say is, you know, the perseverance to understand yourself better as an individual, and for that experience, you know, of, you know, perhaps suffering with some health difficulties, or like you mentioned, you know, myriad of other symptoms. So, you know, mood problems, gut problems, and not being silenced or, you know, quietened by somebody else who perhaps thinks they know their body better than you, I should say. So I think that's, you know, such a valuable piece of advice for people, because unfortunately there is so little awareness, you know, of the impact of, you know, we're talking about obviously a clear allergy here with gluten, and we have clear allergies, but also intolerances and sensitivities, and which we know are, you know, are rife for people as well, and do contribute towards health problems. So thanks so much for sharing that. I think that's really valuable.
No, I mean, I think there's the old, I think it's Hippocrates quote, which I'm probably completely butchering the pronunciation there, but it's like, let food be thy medicine. And I think it's so true. The more I've researched, the more that food is beneficial for so many things, not just those immediate, obvious sort of allergies, intolerances, and so forth, but things like arthritis. There's certain foods that are beneficial to avoid. If you have thyroid problems, don't eat too much cauliflower, for example. It's all interlinked, and it makes that, you know, we are what we eat. I just find it fascinating, and I think take it as an opportunity.
Yeah, no, and that's another thing. Like you did say, it's an opportunity to explore more. And one thing that I've always worked with my clients is, you know, whenever we do any kind of form of what I call an elimination diet, or we remove certain foods from the diet, really, I never want somebody's focus to be about what they can't have. And like you said, it's all about exploring, getting creative, becoming inspired by, you know, the likes of yourself or other people that are kind of in that space who are doing such, you know, incredible work to raise awareness and make people feel a sense of, you know, collection and belonging, and, you know, allow them to be understood in the challenges that they're facing. So I think it's really important that people, you know, get out there and see it as an opportunity, right? Rather than a kind of, you know, a negative, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, maybe set yourself a little challenge of try one new ingredient a week, or, you know, that could be anything. That could be if you've got a child that's a fussy eater. That could be, you know, if you're having to go, you know, you're choosing to go refined sugar free, for example. It's just, I think it's a really nice opportunity to try and make a positive. I'm always very much about taking opportunity from adversity, and I think that, you know, this sums it up.
No, it does, absolutely. And, you know, I can see that you're glowing through the screen when you talk about it. It's clearly been a challenge, but it's been one that's helped you to grow. And I know that the same is true for many people. And, you know, just briefly touching on the role that diet and food and nutrition plays, well, you know, it was Hippocrates that said, let food be your medicine. And he also said that, you know, all disease begins in the gut as well. So as we begin to look at, you know, the impact that these food sensitivities, allergies, intolerances have, we are now awakening to the fact that, you know, nutrition is our most powerful tool to get well. And, you know, that's what the Stay Well series is about. You know, it's about supporting our community with information that can help them to, you know, stay healthy and happy. So thank you so much, you know, for coming today and sharing just a little bit about your experiences. I think it's been really, really valuable for people.
You know, thank you so much. I mean, I'm fascinated, especially the research they're doing into the gut being the second brain and all of that. I mean, I could talk for hours about it. So yeah, no, it's really nice to be able to chat to you. Thank you.
No, I'm sure we could chat for hours. And, you know, just before kind of we end off, is there any other topics? I mean, we're not too short for time, so is there anything else you kind of wanted to explore a little bit today, or anything else that you're feeling passionate about that maybe you'd like to inspire or kind of sprinkle onto people?
Oh gosh, that's putting me on the spot. You've covered a lot of like the key messages. So yeah, I mean, I suppose that it's more just sort of going back to that whole point about, it's not about restriction and eliminating, but about sort of adding goodness. And so for example, well, good example, I never used to eat breakfast. Now I have a range of granola because I love breakfast so much. So there's, you know, there's always a positive to be taken from a situation. I think it's really important to have that mentality, and it's not always easy, but yeah, it's definitely something that I would encourage other people to try and embrace.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's such a switch that can be applied to our mindsets when we begin to look at anything in life, right, as this, challenge or obstacle through which we can grow, as opposed to something that will numb us down. So thank you so much, Astrid, for joining us today. I hope you guys listening have, found some use or resonated with a lot of, what Astrid has said. And of course, if you guys know anybody that's suffering at all with any kind of dietary restrictions, requirements, challenges, you can get in touch with Astrid. I'm sure she'll be able to provide you some awesome advice. Obviously, I'm a nutritionist as well, and I'm sure people will know that. And the both of us are here to help and provide kind of our support and information where we can. Astrid, where can people find you after this episode if they want to get in touch, if they want to come and find the recipes? What are the website addresses?
Yeah, so I'm HaloEats, which is what I am on Facebook, or www.haloeats.com for the recipes. And on Instagram, I'm halo.eats, which is really annoying. But yeah, there's a little dot in the middle of the HaloEats on Instagram.
Wicked, that's awesome. What I'll make sure is that all of your Instagram and your social media tags and stuff like that are left below the video so that people can check out what he's doing. And also, guys, another thing to say is that when it comes to Welcome Home, you can stay up to date with everything that we're doing through our social media channels. You will regularly see Astrid's beautiful face appearing with many of her recipes, whether it's smoothies, breakfast bowls, cakes, bliss balls, you name it, we have it. We've shared a lot of it on there, and we will continue to do so because we think it's really valuable. Food being medicine, and it's so important that as Welcome Home, the ethos that we share, especially through this podcast, is that we want to inspire you guys to eat well and to live well. So I think that's all for today, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Astrid, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And we will see you guys soon. Take care.
Thanks.